849 words, right on target. Here's the finished script for your brain literally rewrites your past. 1919, a 2-year-old boy in Paris survived a violent kidnapping attempt in broad daylight, scratches on his face. A crowd gathering, a man with a stick fighting off the attacker. He remembered it his whole life in vivid sensory detail. And decades later, neuroscientists still cannot fully explain how his brain built a memory of something that never happened at all. The boy grew up to become Piaget, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century. For over 30 years, he carried this memory as fact. He could describe the nanny's grip on his hand. He could describe the attacker's face, the color of the afternoon light, the exact bench near the Champs-Élysées where it happened. He testified to the texture of the moment, the fear, the crowd pressing in close. Then when Piaget was 15, his former nanny wrote to his parents. She'd found religion. She wanted to confess. She had invented the entire kidnapping to collect a reward for saving him. There had been no attacker. There had been no stick. The scratches, if they existed, came from somewhere else entirely. Here's the first anomaly. Piaget didn't just believe a story he'd been told as a toddler. He remembered it, not as a fact he'd accepted, as an experience he'd lived through, complete with sound, motion, and fear. He wrote later that even after learning the truth, the memory did not dissolve. He could still see it in his mind exactly as before. Knowing it was false changed nothing about how it felt to recall. The confession corrected his beliefs. It did not touch the memory itself. The obvious explanation is that a small child simply absorbed an adult's repeated story and mistook hearing for seeing. Children are suggestible. Piaget's parents and nanny discussed the attack for years at family gatherings, adding detail each time. A toddler's brain, the theory goes, just filed the story under things that happened to me, the way a photograph gets mislabeled in a drawer and later mistaken for the real thing. But that theory breaks down under a detail researchers didn't have until the 1990s. In 1994, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus ran an experiment called Lost in the Mall. She and a colleague convinced adult subjects they'd been lost in a shopping mall as children, an event that had never occurred. A quarter of participants didn't just accept the suggestion. They generated new sensory details unprompted. The color of a stranger's jacket, the smell of the food court, the panic in their chest, the relief of a parent's hand finding theirs again. The false memory wasn't a copy of the suggestion. It was a new construction built from the brain's own machinery, indistinguishable from something real. That points to the deepest part of the mystery, and it isn't about children or suggestion at all. In 2000, neuroscientist Karim Nader ran an experiment that overturned a century of assumptions about memory. The standard model held that a memory, once formed and stored, sat in the brain like a file in a cabinet, stable, fixed, safe to retrieve without altering it. Nader trained rats to fear a sound, then let them recall that fear while blocking a specific protein synthesis process in the amygdala. The fear memory didn't stay intact. It vanished permanently, as if it had never been trained in at all. The act of remembering had reopened the memory, made it chemically unstable again, and without the protein rebuild, it failed to reclose. Nader called this reconsolidation. Every time a brain recalls something, it doesn't play back a recording. It tears the memory out of storage, exposes it to whatever is happening in that moment, and writes it back down, sometimes with new details, sometimes with none of the old ones, and the brain cannot tell the difference between the original and the rewrite. Researchers have tried to contain this to weak or old memories, the ones already fading. That explanation fails too. Reconsolidation affects vivid, decades-old, emotionally intense memories exactly like Piaget's, just as easily as it affects trivial ones. Strength offers no protection. Neither does confidence. People rate fabricated memories as vividly and as certainly as real ones, sometimes more so. Investigators studying wrongful convictions have found the same pattern in eyewitnesses. Certainty climbs with each retelling, even as accuracy falls, and juries trust the confident witness over the accurate one. What nobody has fully mapped is the mechanism that lets a rewritten memory feel identical to a lived one. Why the brain attaches the same conviction, the same sensory weight, to something it manufactured as to something it witnessed. Piaget himself, a man who spent his career studying how children construct reality, never fully explained why his own false memory refused to unravel even after he knew the truth. So the scratches on a 2-year-old's face in 1919 were never explained. And the question underneath them is still open every time you remember anything. What part of your past did your brain just rewrite to tell you this?